Okay. The British, remember back then, not that you were alive, but that when you've seen these type of armies fight, they're kind of, you see the officers, a junior officer might be off to the side, there's like a company that he's commanding, right? And the more senior officers are on horseback commanding several companies at one time, right? And in this type of war, when they would fight, the officers were very much in charge, and when you fought, it was considered uncouth to aim for an officer, right? You aim for the soldiers. Killing an officer was considered to be bad form because you can't let the men off by themselves because they were unruly and hard to control. Well, when they went through, much like a central Kentucky road, right, with the stones on each side, when they decided they were going through, a lot of militia got in the forest behind the trees. And they were told, don't just hit the soldiers. Who do you shoot first? Guys on horses, right? You create chaos. You make it hard for them, and they did. And it was a turkey shoot, and they never managed to conquer like they wanted to. And this is the first skirmish of the war. The Lexington Concord is the first skirmish of the war. Okay. Any questions so far? So moving forward, when they go to fight. And they haven't declared independence yet, the United States hasn't. In fact, they haven't even come to the decision to declare independence. But the First Continental Congress had already met and already convened and left, right? That was for about a month and a half. This is in April of 1775, to give you a time frame. April of 1775. Yes, ma'am?
Who's General Gage?
Okay. General Gage is the British general who was in charge of the British forces at Lexington Concord. That's a good question. So when the war is on its way to starting, it's important for us to look at so we can gauge, no pun intended, we can gauge what advantages and disadvantages they had or didn't have. Brenda, if you need to go, you can go. Okay. You missed something? It's on video.
No.
Okay. Now, what do you think the British advantages were right off the bat?
Training.
Okay, number one, they had probably better trained soldiers, right? The British soldier was highly trained, relative certainly to the colonial militia.
Resources like better weapons.
They might have had better weapons to begin with. They certainly had a lot more money, right? They had a lot more money in terms of resources. Who had more people, the colonies or England?
England.
England had 3 times more people than the colonies did. So they have more money, they have better trained fighting forces. Who do you think the Native Americans are going to side with? The British or the American colonists?
British.
If you're an Indian, why are you siding with the British? Because it makes all the sense in the world, right? Yeah. Didn't the British try to stop the American colonists from taking land with the Proclamation Line of 1763? What do the American colonists want? All the land, right? The British don't want this because they don't want they don't have to get in between the American colonists and the Indians. So the British are going to get the Indian help. They're also going to get the help of some mercenaries. What mercenaries were hired, do you know? Germans. Germans. Aren't you part German? You look it. Do you kill babies?
Maybe.
Well, then you're German. Rahel was in class. She speaks German. She's from Switzerland. Yeah, and she claimed that Germans don't kill babies. I've been to Germany. I saw no one kill babies. I was talking about this thing about alcohol. I forget how it came up, but I said Germans love alcohol. And like, does Swiss love alcohol? And she was like, no, we love cheese. All right. A lot of cheese? She's like, yes. Well, I guess if you go to Switzerland, which I've never been to, there's lots of cheese. It's everywhere. Just falling out of the trees. What do you think were weaknesses the British were going to have to overcome? One of them is, while you said they had resources, they weren't always that well provisioned because it was 3,000 miles each way, and it ain't like they had the Concorde back then to fly them back and forth, right? So So think about it. We need more fill in the blanks. All right, let me get on a ship and let's go tell them. And a month later, the ship gets filled up, and 3 months later, it shows up. So in February, you're like, hey, I'm really cold. Can I have some blankets? And you get them in September. So you don't get everything you need as easily. Long way from home. What are other weaknesses? Yeah, they didn't know the land. They weren't fighting for their home. Don't people fight more fiercely when they're fighting for their homeland? Or maybe even fighting for their freedom? What were the British fighting for?
Money.
Yeah, they were fighting so these colonies wouldn't... If you're a British soldier and you're 3,000 miles from home, you're not fighting for your freedom. You're fighting for these people who you don't know 3,000 miles away to get freedoms that you probably wish you had. Right? And that was another thing. The British soldiers, really, a lot of them weren't all into it. Now, clearly some of them were, and clearly some of them were ruthless, but it wasn't the same thing, right? They were killing people who also spoke English. What? Oh, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't be like, take off glasses, look at the next thing. It's all blurry. All right. What else do you think?
Didn't they have to follow like the rules established by war? Because like you said, the colonists killed the generals, so they.
Well, to be fair, the colonists didn't just pick off all the generals, but they did, but it wasn't that they had to. There were plenty of British people who did atrocities, but like one of them was, look how big this amount of land is, right? The British had to win. What did the colonists have to do? Just not lose, right? Just don't lose. You know how hard it is with an army to actually occupy this much territory and force people to do something back then? Really hard. All the colonists had to do was not lose. What if the British actually took over a town? What could the colonists do? Just go into the countryside and live off the land, right? It was really hard. It was hard to crush them because you had to win. All the colonists had to do was just keep fighting until the British got tired of it. Who was just waiting to stab England in the back? France. France could not wait to get back at England. The French-Indian War, the 7 Years' War just couldn't happen. The French are just looking to stab the British in the back. Do we owe the French a lot of help for our independence?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, did they help us because they love democracy?
No.
No. Why'd they help us? Because they wanted to get back at Britain. And we knew that. We knew the score. We knew France wasn't like, we want to help you have democracy. Now, we have an authoritarian king, but yay, democracy, right? They were getting back at Britain. Yay, democracy. Okay, so what were some of our... Oh, one more thing. The British generals. The British generals who are over here were not their A team. Right? Britain was fighting other wars around the world, and the A team was not in America. We fought the generals were the JV team. We got the guys who did not finish top of their class. What were the American strengths? Well, number one, we had awesome leadership. George Washington was not a great general in the sense of tactician. He was not nearly the military tactician that I was, right? George Washington lost more battles than he won. He was not a brilliant military mind. But what he was a leader of men. People followed him. Why'd they follow him? Well, number one, he looked confident. He was very stately, always in a military outfit. He was tall. Before a lot of people were tall back then, right? He was like 6'3", which is tall for back then, right? 6'4". And he made people feel like he knew what he was doing, even when he didn't. Ben Franklin was an awesome diplomat. Ben Franklin didn't fire a shot in this war and might have been one of the biggest factors in winning the war. He was a diplomat, and guess whose butt he kissed a whole bunch for help? France. France, we had France's navy, we had France's money, we had some of France's troops, we had Lafayette, right? And this is coming from Franklin using his diplomatic skill and his love of French prostitutes as a way to get America what they needed to do to win. And like I had said before, other than France, other than that, we just had to not lose, right? Just had to not lose. We also could be sustaining agriculturally. We could live off the land, right? We were going to be hard to beat. This was our own land. We had a moral cause. Well, what was bad for us? Because we had a lot of things going against us too. What was bad for the Americans? Yeah, we have a smaller population and we're not organized. We did not have an ultimately efficient military, machine. The Continental Army was not, the Green Berets. They were brave and they got to be trained well eventually. But early on in the war, there were a lot of people who were very unorganized. There was jealousy, a lot of jealousy amongst the officers, because a lot of them didn't think that Washington was really that brilliant. And so people who had money might get, like if you were a rich landowner, you might get a title of colonel or major or something like that, even if you didn't deserve it. We had tons of money problems. We were essentially just printing money off at one point. Lots of inflation problems. So there are definitely problems. Morale is all over the place. But that is that. Questions before we start the revolution itself? We are now really far past already. We're past first block now.
I should say going to be in the middle of the next revolution.
Gonna be.
Okay.
First block, we went over their test off for 25 minutes. Because all of theirs was done.
That's why you explicitly stated that earlier.
Tomorrow, we'll be going over your guys' test, so it'll even out by the end of the month. Although they had more sad faces than I think you guys are going to have. We'll see. All right. May 10th, 1775, the Second Continental Congress convenes. What's the time on that?
12:45.
Okay. Guess who showed up in May? Georgia. Georgia showed up, by God. Attaboy. Georgia's there. Thar.